They say if you stare into the dark long enough, something might just stare back. My name is Danielle McKee. I live alone in a modest upstairs apartment on Fairgrove Street, quiet, tree-lined, and uneventful. Or at least it was. I've always struggled with sleep. I'd stay up watching old mystery movies or reading, hoping to doze off by 2 or 3. My bedroom window faces another house directly across the street, an aging 2-story colonial with yellow paint chipping from the wood, and a porch light that flickers every few seconds like a dying firefly. It was the kind of house you'd never pay much attention to. Until one night I did. That night I was lying in bed with the TV on mute, scrolling absently through my phone when something caught my eye. A light, upstairs, in the window directly across from mine. And then I saw him, a figure, a man. He stood perfectly still, framed in that upper window as if carved from the shadows themselves. I couldn't see his face, only his shape, motionless and straight-backed. He didn't pace, he didn't blink. He simply watched. I stared back. A chill rippled through me, though I didn't know why. I live in a city. Neighbors look out windows all the time, right? But this didn't feel like that. I looked at the clock. 2:13 a.m. Then I pulled the curtain shut and told myself it was nothing. But the next night at the exact same time, he was there again. Same window, same posture, same stillness. That's when the unease became something more. Not fear, not yet, but a crawling sort of discomfort, like I'd woken up to something that had been watching me all along. I snapped a photo with my phone, just to prove it to myself. But the screen came out black, not blurry, not grainy, black. No man, no window, no house, just the reflection of me, alone, looking afraid. The following morning I crossed the street. I'd never met the owner, but I knocked on the door anyway. After a moment, an older woman answered, mid-60s maybe. She wore thick house slippers and looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. I introduced myself and gently asked about the man I'd seen in the upstairs window. Her face changed. Her voice was a whisper. "There's no one up there," she said. "I don't go into that room anymore. Not since my husband passed." I left her porch with ice in my veins. That night I tried not to look, I really did. But at 2:13 a.m., I found myself peeking through a slit in the curtain. He was there, only this time, he moved. He raised one hand, slowly, deliberately, and waved. I jumped back from the window. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. My body didn't obey. I slept with the lights on, all of them. I kept a heavy flashlight beside me, clutching it like a weapon. Then for 2 nights, nothing. No light in the window. No man. The 3rd night, I dared to hope it was over, that maybe I'd imagined it all. Maybe I'd been overtired, overstressed. I left the curtain open just a little, enough to see the porch light flickering across the street. And that's when I heard it. A creak, the sound of a gate. My gate, followed by tap, tap, tap on the glass. Not from the house across the street, from my window. I didn't want to look, but I had to. And there he was, standing in my yard, right beneath my window. No expression, no movement, just watching. Like he'd always been watching, and when he saw me looking, he waved again. The clock on my nightstand turned to 2:13 a.m. I haven't opened the curtains since. And every night since then, I sit in the dark, wondering if he's still there, or worse, if he's getting closer. Some people notice things, most don't. I've always been the kind that pays attention, especially when it comes to neighbors. My name is Marlene Carter. I moved into my duplex on Sycamore Drive about 4 years ago. It's a sleepy street in a quiet part of town. The kind of place where you recognize every face on every porch. All except one. She lives 2 doors down. Older, maybe late 60s. White hair pulled into a tight bun. Thick glasses. Doesn't speak to anyone. I don't know her name. None of us do. But every night, and I mean every night, she comes outside to clean her sidewalk. Not sweep, not rake leaves. She cleans it, scrubs it, on her hands and knees, with a metal bucket, a long-handled brush, and something that looks like black soap. She does it silently, like it's a sacred ritual, and always after dark. At first I thought it was odd, then I thought it was sad. Now, I think it's something else entirely. The first time I paid real attention was after midnight. I was having trouble sleeping and stepped onto my porch for some fresh air. She was already out there, bent over the concrete like a statue scrubbing away, the bristles making a dry, rasping sound. I waved. She didn't look up. I figured maybe she was hard of hearing or ignoring me. Either way, I didn't wave again. But over the next few weeks, it got stranger. The sidewalk never looked dirty. But she scrubbed the same spot, over and over, like she was trying to erase something the rest of us couldn't see. Then one night I noticed she'd crossed over, not just to her driveway, to mine. I watched from the upstairs window as she knelt beside my walkway, a plastic bag beside her, that same bucket. Her movements were slower now, more careful, like she was covering tracks, not cleaning them. And her rag, it wasn't grey anymore. It was dark, stained red. I went outside the next morning to check. There were damp streaks across the sidewalk, leading all the way back to her place. The smell was strange, metallic, faint, but there. I asked the man who lives next door, quiet guy, teaches biology at the high school, if he'd seen her lately. He just nodded. She's always out there, he said, ever since her son disappeared. What happened to him? I asked. The man didn't answer. He just shrugged and shut his door. I couldn't let it go. That night I stayed up again, lights off, watching. She was already outside, only this time she wasn't alone. There was a shape beside her, hard to see. It looked like a figure covered with a tarp. She scrubbed next to it, rubbed the sidewalk with both hands like she was trying to dig memories out of the concrete. I grabbed my phone and started recording, but the screen stayed black. Again. I decided to install a camera on my porch. Motion activated. I needed proof, or peace of mind. What I got was worse. The footage showed her, crawling, on all fours, dragging herself across my front lawn, like some kind of insect. The bucket clenched between her teeth. She reached my porch steps and stopped, lifted her head, and stared directly into the lens. She didn't blink, she didn't move, just stared for 36 minutes. Then crawled backward, into the dark. I took the camera down the next morning. She's still out there, still scrubbing, and the worst part, now the stains are getting closer to my door. My name is Elizabeth Mitchell. I live on the east end of Raleigh Street in Wyoming, a quiet, ordinary neighborhood with quiet, ordinary people. I moved here last spring after my divorce, looking for peace. What I got was something else. There's a man who lives 3 houses down. I never learned his name. No one seemed to know much about him, and he didn't exactly invite conversation. Every evening, just before sunset, he would wheel himself onto his front porch in a battered old wheelchair. He'd park, facing the street, hands folded neatly in his lap, and sit there in total silence. Not reading, not on a phone, not enjoying the weather, just staring. At first I thought maybe he was watching the trees, or the birds, or nothing at all. I told myself not to be judgmental. Maybe he was a veteran, maybe he was lonely. But by the third night it became clear he was staring directly at my house. His porch light was dim, but bright enough to catch the outline of his head. And even from that distance, I could tell he wasn't blinking. He just sat there, frozen every night, watching my front window like a statue in a wheelchair. I tried to ignore it. I kept my curtains drawn. I told myself I was imagining it. But on the fifth night, I made the mistake of looking back. He raised his hand, not to wave, not to gesture, just raised it, like a signal, like he was letting me know he saw me watching him. That night I didn't sleep. I left a light on in the living room and checked the lock on the door 3 times. And then around 12:40 a.m., I heard a knock. 3 knocks. Slow, heavy, confident. I froze. My heart was thundering. I peeked through the peephole, and everything I thought I knew about that man shattered in an instant, because he wasn't in a wheelchair anymore. He was standing, tall, straight-backed and smiling. His face was worse than I'd imagined, not just aged or weathered, but disfigured. Skin sunken and tight around his jaw. His left eye drooped, his lips twisted into a warped grin that stretched far too wide. He didn't say a word. He didn't knock again. He just stood there on my porch, that horrible smile fixed on his face. I backed away and grabbed my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. I called the police. They arrived in minutes. 2 officers. But by the time they pulled up, the man was gone. No wheelchair, no sign of footsteps, nothing. I asked the officers to check his house. They did. Knocked, rang the bell. No one answered. Then, one of them came back to me and said something that made my knees go weak. "That house," he said, "it's been vacant for months. Belonged to a man who passed away last year, in a nursing home." I told them what I saw. They nodded politely, said they'd patrol the block for a while. But I could see it in their faces. They didn't believe me. That was 4 nights ago. Since then, no one's seen him. But every night, just before sunset, the porch light in that house turns on. And I know he's still watching. I've always been a night owl. It started when I was a teenager, reading under the covers with a flashlight. Now I just scroll, or sometimes flip through the channels on my old bedroom TV, letting the noise help me fall asleep. My name is Tessa DeWitt. I'm 38. I live alone in a modest 2-bedroom house on Birch Lane. A quiet street, older homes, retirees mostly. I work remote. Keep to myself. Nothing ever really happens around here. Until it did. It started 2 weeks ago. Late Thursday night. I couldn't sleep. I was restless, flipping channels aimlessly on my bedroom TV, one of those older flat screens with a built-in antenna. Around channel 113 or so, I hit static, but just as I moved to skip it, the screen changed. It sharpened, slowly, and what I saw made my skin crawl. It was me, sitting on the couch, wearing the same t-shirt and sweatpants I had on right then, hair tied up the same way. The room behind me was identical to mine. Except, it wasn't now. It was earlier. Earlier that same evening, it was footage of me eating dinner, alone, at the coffee table. Same plate, same water bottle. The screen showed me getting up, walking into the kitchen, rinsing my dish, drying my hands. I watched, frozen. It was exactly what I had done. No delay, No editing. Just recorded. Somehow. I told myself I must have sat on the remote and switched to a security feed. But I don't have cameras. Not inside. I grabbed the remote and flipped away, tried to forget it. Told myself I was tired. Maybe I'd hit some freak local loop, a prank, an error, something. The next night it happened again. Same static, same channel, same room. But this time I was folding laundry. I hadn't even realized anyone could see in from outside, but they must have. It was the exact same angle, same lighting. I moved in perfect sync. It wasn't some old footage. It was always today. I checked for hidden cameras. I unplugged the TV. I taped my windows. I called the cable provider. They said I didn't have channel 113. I asked a neighbor, a man who lives across the street. Quiet type, maybe mid-60s. Always outside fiddling with a massive satellite dish on his garage roof. When I mentioned the channel, he looked at me like I'd said something filthy. Then he smiled. Thin, tight. And he shut his door. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I kept thinking about that dish. It was aimed directly at my bedroom window. Always had been. I'd just never paid it any mind before. The following night, I tried not to look. But sometime after midnight, I gave in. Channel 113. There I was again, but this time, I wasn't alone. The footage showed me sitting on my bed, flipping through channels, exactly as I had been. But behind me, in the corner of the room, there was something else. A figure, tall, dark, barely visible, standing perfectly still in the corner, right where the closet is. I turned in real life. There was nothing there. But when I looked back at the screen, it had moved, closer, now behind me. I snapped the remote in half, trying to shut the TV off. I don't turn it on anymore, but some nights I can still hear static, even when it's unplugged. And I know, if I ever look again, that figure won't be behind me. It'll be where I'm sitting. My name is Erin Page. I'm 35 years old, and I live in a small house on Coral Bend, a sun-baked suburban cul-de-sac where the grass dies every July and nothing exciting ever happens, until he moved in. The house next door had been empty for nearly a year. I never saw a move-in truck, never met a realtor. Just one day the blinds were open and the porch light was on, and he was sitting out there, wearing a long dark coat, in the middle of a heat wave. It was nearly 90 degrees that day, sun scorching the pavement. The air was still, and there he sat, a thin man, pale, maybe mid-50s, in a full-length black wool trench coat buttoned to the collar. He didn't look up when I waved, didn't smile. Just sat there, staring at nothing. At first I assumed he had some condition. Maybe he was cold all the time. Maybe he was eccentric. We've all got our quirks, right? But then it became constant. Morning? Coat? Noon? He still had on the coat? 3 a.m.? Still out there under the porch light, completely still, like a shadow that forgot how to leave. I mentioned it to my neighbor across the street. She leaned in like we were trading ghost stories. He's always out there, every night. I don't think he sleeps. I started noticing things. He never checked the mail, never brought out trash, never spoke. And then one afternoon I saw something that stayed with me. He was sitting in a folding chair by the edge of his driveway. Same coat, buttoned up. But his sleeve twitched, not his arm, just the sleeve. Like something inside the coat was moving. It pulsed once, like a twitch. Then again a little more deliberate, like something alive struggling just beneath the fabric. I blinked, Looked again. He was still. 2 nights later, I was taking out my trash when I heard it. A low, wet thumping sound. I glanced toward his porch. He was rocking slightly in the chair. Not his whole body, just his chest, rising and falling in uneven gasps. And that coat. It was moving like something inside was shifting. I stood frozen. Then he looked at me. Not turned his head. Just flicked his eyes sideways. It was the first time he acknowledged me, and it was enough. I dropped the bag and went back inside. The next morning, I couldn't help myself. I walked past his driveway slowly, pretending to check my garden hose. I looked carefully and saw a trail, a faint streak of moisture, dark, viscous, leading from his porch down the sidewalk and disappearing beneath the street drain. That night, I left my porch light off, but at around 2:15 a.m., I heard the hinges creak. I peeked through the blinds. He was in my yard, standing under my window, same coat, still buttoned to the top, no expression. His hands were in his pockets. His shoes were soaked. He stood there for 20 minutes, then walked back to his porch without a word. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. Finally, I called animal control, not the police, not yet. I told them there might be a large, injured animal in the neighborhood. I didn't know how else to explain what I thought I saw. They knocked on his door the next day. I watched from inside, peeking just between 2 slats of the living room blinds. He answered, still in that same black coat. No hesitation, no concern. Just that thin-lipped, unnatural smile. He spoke softly. I couldn't hear what he said, and the animal control officer nodded like it was all routine. Then they left. I let out a shaky breath, thought it was over. But then I glanced back at his house. He hadn't gone back to his chair. He was standing at the upstairs window, directly across from mine, staring directly at me. The smile was gone. And this time, he wasn't blinking. His face was blank, expressionless, but I knew exactly what it meant. He'd seen me, not just now. He'd always seen me. I stepped back from the blinds and didn't look again. That night, I slept in my clothes, didn't turn on any lights, didn't eat, didn't speak, just stared at my phone and counted the hours until sunrise. And the next morning, I left. I packed only what I could carry, left dishes in the sink, food in the fridge, my lease unpaid. I didn't even leave a note. I just drove. New place, new street, new locks on every door. But sometimes at night, I catch myself staring at the window across from mine, just to be sure. And some nights, I think I see the edge of a black coat as someone steps just out of view. Thank you for joining us tonight on Late Night Horror Stories and True Crime. If you enjoyed these quiet terrors, the kind that creep in from across the street and knock softly when the world's asleep, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. We'll be waiting here every week with more stories that don't scream, they whisper. Until next time, lock your doors, close your blinds, and whatever you do, don't wave back.